Welcome to this video. Well, I'll show you how to set up your first Rails environment. I'll show you three different options. You can run Rails directly on your computer. That means you'll need to install Ruby and Rails following a guide that you find online. The option I recommend for most people is the second option right here, is to use Devcontainers. You'll install Docker Desktop on your computer, or if you have a Mac, you can install OrbStack, which is supposed to be a little more efficient than Docker Desktop. And so you would also need to install Ruby and Rails on your computer to create your application, but I'll show you how we can create it in CodeSpaces on GitHub. And then if you don't have a computer that runs Docker Desktop very well or Rails on the computer itself, then you can use CodeSpaces, which is fine. There's just a limited compute time. So I'd recommend, if you can, use another option and save that limited compute time for those that don't have a really good computer. Now, the first thing you'll need to do is set up some SSH keys so that you can push your Git commits up to GitHub. And you'll want to do this if you're using Devconatiner or your own machine. So you go up here to settings after you've logged into GitHub, and then over here you'll find the SSH and GPG keys. Right here you'll find a guide on using SSH keys. So if you want to know what this is about, I suggest you read that. And here's some troubleshooting problems. So we could go ahead and create a new SSH key. Now here's the guide on connecting to GitHub with SSH. You can read about this. You can jump to this one where you generate a new SSH key if you know you don't have one. And you can follow the instructions here. You'll need to run this command on your terminal and just save it in the default spot. And you probably want to add a password. So you type a password on it, and that just protects your keys. If someone gets your key, they need to know your password to be able to use it. So that adds an extra layer of protection. And then when you're done, you'll copy your SSH key out. You'll add a new SSH key. You can give it a title so you know where it came from. And then you paste in your key here. So if you decided to run Ruby and Rails on your computer directly, this is what you'll want to do. You'll want to change to your application or open up a terminal window and change to the directory where you want your application to be stored. And then this is the Rails command that you'll want to run. It's going to create a new directory. This right here is your application name. So make sure you change that to what you want your application to be. You can't do a to-do list in class. You have to do something else. This right here is telling us to skip some GitHub automation that will happen. And we want to skip that because it will end up charging or using a lot of resources that we might have to pay for. So make sure you skip that. And then this right here says that we're going to use SAS for our CSS, which you'll learn more about in class. So go ahead and run that command. And it will create your application. It's creating this all in a folder called under your application name. And once it finishes, then you can change directories into that folder. And then you can open up your code in Visual Studio Code. As you can see here, we have all of our application code, and we can open up a new terminal. And you can run your application with bin dev. And it's complaining that Foreman's not installed, so you can just go gem install Foreman. And you can run your application. And right here is the URL that you want to use. And we can open that up in a web browser. And you can see that we're on our Ruby on Rails application. This is what you want to take a screenshot of so that you can submit your assignment. Now you can quit your application by holding down Control and pressing C, and that'll quit your application. And now what you'll need to do is set up your Git repository by running these three commands. If you set up your SSH keys, you want to use the SSH URL. If you're going to use HTTPS, you can use this URL instead, but you want to run these three commands and push up your code to GitHub. Make sure you go to GitHub and you see your code up here. Now I'll show you how you can create your application and use CodeSpaces. After you get your private Git repository, you can create a CodeSpace here. Now, just in case if you don't see your CodeSpace, then go ahead and create a README by clicking this link right here. And then you'll be able to view your code. And from here, you can create a code space on this side right here. Uh, I'm going to go ahead and create a code space. And we're going to create a new code space. Now make sure you only create one code space for your project and keep using the same one instead of creating new code spaces all the time. And once you get your code space completely set up, you'll have this set up right here and a terminal window. You can open this up on the desktop, open in VS Code Desktop. You'll just have to install an extension. You're still running the code up in the cloud in GitHub's cloud, but you're able to use the Visual Studio Code on your local machine if you want to do that. But you can also just work inside of your browser right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change directories. I'm going to go up a directory. If you notice, you'll have your project name right there. And I'm going up a directory so I can create my Rails application. And then I'm going to copy all the code into my project there. That way I have the application name throughout my code, but I don't create a new folder inside of this to-do 8 folder. And you'll want to check your Rails version to see if it's already installed. The Rails is not installed, so we can check to see if our Ruby is installed. And we got Ruby 3.4.1, which should be just fine. Then we'll just go gem install Rails. Now, after that's installed, we can check to make it sure it's installed and that we have the latest version. As of this recording is 8.0.2. Make sure you look it up online and have the latest Rails version. And from there, we can create our new Rails application. So we're gonna go Rails new, and this is your application name. I'm doing a to-do application right here. Of course, we want to skip our CI so that we don't run our GitHub actions that cost us extra money. And of course, we want to use Sass. Now, don't worry if that takes a while or it looks like it hung. Just wait for it to complete. It might take 2 or 3 minutes for it to complete. And then I'm going to change into my application name, which I called to do. Now, if you look in here, we have all of our code. What we want to do is copy this code over into our main project directory. And mine is called to do 8, but you probably have another directory that probably says something with your GitHub username in it. So that's what we want to do. We want to copy the files from to do to our repository name. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to change into my to do directory. This is the one with all my application code, and I'm going to remove the .git repository because Git's already set up in my other application. I don't want to overwrite it with this new one that's just been created. Okay, and then I can move everything. This star says everything. I'm go up a directory to the workspace folder and then down a directory. And you want to replace this to do 8 with your GitHub repository name that probably has your Git username in it and stuff like that. And then you should see all of your code right here. Now I just realized that move command, it moved all the regular folders, but it didn't move any of the hidden folders. So we also need to move all the hidden folders and files. So that would be move period star and then up a directory and into to do 8. And then I'm changing directories into that code, and then I can go run my bin dev to start my application. And once we see that application, this might pop up. You can also hold down Command and click right there. We can open that in a browser, and hopefully everything will work. And we got our Ruby on Rails application. And this is what you want to take a screenshot to turn into Canvas. And then to get out of your development environment, hold down Control and press C. And now we're out of that. And now we don't have to do anything to set up our Git repository. We could just do git commit or git add -a to add all of our all of our code and then git commit -m and call it our first commit. And then git push to push it all up to GitHub. And that's all we have to do. We should be able to go back to GitHub and see our code. Okay, now I'll show you how to create a application using CodeSpaces, but then we're going to bring the code down to our computer and we're going to use Devcontainers. Now, please don't use Devcontainers and stay on CodeSpaces because you'll use up a couple of extra containers that will be wasted and we don't really need to use them. So we're going to go ahead and create a CodeSpace. Now, if you don't see the CodeSpace here, then you can browse to the repository, create a README, and then you'll find the green button. You can create a code space from there. So go ahead and create our code space. Now, what we want to do is we want to change directories back up a directory. So this directory right here is your repository name. And we want to get our code here, but if we run the rels new command, it'll create a folder and put our code inside of there. So I want to go up a directory to run our rels new command. And we want to check to see if Rails is installed. It's not, so we need to install it by doing gem install Rails. Then after Rails is installed, now we can make sure we have the latest version. This is the version, so 8.0.2 is the latest version as of this recording. So we go ahead and type in our Rails command to create our new application. Make sure you're changing to do with your application name. And this will create a new folder, and that new folder will be called by whatever you call your application name. Now this will take a few minutes, so now don't worry if that takes a few minutes. Now just let me show you our folders. We got our repository folder. That's the to-do 8 because that's the name of my GitHub repository. Now your GitHub repository will have a different name. It probably have your Git username in it if you're using this in your class. And this is the application that Rails just created. So I'm going to change into the application that Rails just created. Now that I'm in there, I'm going to remove the .git repository because Rails created this new Git repository, but I want to still use the repository that's already in this code space. And once I've removed that, I can move all of my code right here. So that's move everything up a folder and then down into my Git repository. Now, again, this will be your Git repository name, probably will have scaffold and your username in it. So make sure you move your code into there. And once you move all of your code into there, you should see it show up here. So now we can move up a directory and we can change into our repository code name. Again, this is the one that has your GitHub username in it. And we can go ahead and see what we have. Now my move command, it moved all of the regular folders, but it didn't move any of the hidden folders. So we want to go ahead and make sure we move those too. So I'm going back into my application folder. And if you notice, it doesn't seem like there's any files there, but if we do -A, it shows all the hidden files that we need to copy over to. So let's go ahead and copy those or move them. We'll move .star. So this is everything that starts with a star, and we'll move that up a directory and into our application folder name. So again, this is our scaffold repository name. And once it says that, Visual Studio Code at least notices that we have this dev container and it wants us to rebuild, but we're not going to do that because that's going to use a lot of extra resources. So now we'll go back a folder and then into our to-do, our repository folder. Again, this is this folder here that has our scaffold in it. And then we'll just go git add -a, git commit -m. And we'll call this our first commit. And then we'll get push all of that up to our repository. Now what we need to do is we need to delete this repository or this code space, not the repository. So we go back to my CodeSpaces somewhere, maybe even the back button, or you can just type github.com and back and then find the repository and make sure you go and you delete the code space so that we can save resources for those that actually need to use it. Okay. Then go back to our repository and we want to go ahead and go to our local and we'll want to copy the URL. If you know that you set up your SSH keys and they work, you can use the SSH URL. If you're going to use HTTPS, then you can use that URL, but I'll go ahead and copy that. Okay, now we're going to clone that repository onto our own computer. We can click this and click clone repository. And I'm going to paste in the URL that I got. And now it's asking me where I want to save it. I'm going to just save it. And would you like to open it? Of course, I'd like to open it. And it notices that it found a dev container and it wants us to reopen that in a container. So make sure you have Docker Desktop running or org stack and reopen it in a container. And you can kind of look at the logs and hopefully everything's working. You do need to make sure you're signed in to your Docker Desktop account in order for it to pull down the images that it's going to use. Now this will take quite a while because it has to download the images and build stuff, but as soon as you're done, you can press any key to close the terminal, and we can just open up a new terminal. And now that we're in our CodeSpaces, we should be able to go bin/dev, which will install our application. And then it says it wants to open it in a browser. And we see that we're on Ruby on Rails, and this is what you need to take a screenshot of.